I need to share this story, but I can't risk the host finding out, as I'm certain they wouldn't approve. So, I'll do my best to make it clear without revealing too much. Recently, I spent a year studying in Mexico, and like any exchange student, I seized every opportunity to travel. During the break between semesters, my closest friend and I decided to embark on a lengthy backpacking adventure across the country. Our plan was loose, with no set return flight or fixed itinerary, leaving us the freedom to explore as we pleased. We had an incredible journey, but as our trip neared its end, we eventually chose a city with cheap flights as our departure point, though it had little to offer in terms of attractions. We found a room on Airbnb near the airport, in a house with a pool, and figured we'd indulge in a relaxing day by the water to cap off our adventure. The hosts turned out to be a family. The husband was Mexican, and his wife was European, who, to our surprise, spoke our native language. They arranged to pick us up from the airport after we arrived by bus. However, when we reached the city, it was already dark, and the bus driver refused to take us all the way to the airport, leaving us stranded on the side of the highway. It was a bad situation, two foreigners with backpacks, standing in the middle of nowhere in a not-so-safe part of Mexico. I called the host and sent them our GPS coordinates. They assured us it wasn't a problem and that they'd come to get us. When the husband arrived, it was an uncomfortable situation, getting into a stranger's car at night, in an unfamiliar place. To make matters worse, he bore an uncanny resemblance to Danny Trejo, minus the mustache. My attempts at small talk were met with one-word answers or outright silence. I told myself he was just not much of a talker and hoped we'd arrive soon. In hindsight, there were countless red flags, but we were too tired and had little choice but to go along with it. We finally arrived at their house, which should have immediately raised alarms. It was located in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by fields with sheep and goats, and accessed via a gravel road lined with massive mansions, each encircled by high walls topped with NATO wire, enormous gates, and at least 2 guard dogs per property. Inside, we were greeted by the wife, a lively woman who was very talkative and had even prepared dinner for us. We made small talk while eating, though the husband remained silent throughout. Afterward, we headed to bed, exhausted from the day. The next morning, we decided to explore the town instead of lounging by the pool since the weather wasn't great. When we returned later that evening, we took a dip in the pool to cool off. The wife joined us, and my friend, unfortunately, asked how they could afford such a house, given their modest jobs. She brushed off the question, mentioning that her husband was very handy, having grown up on the streets, and had essentially built the house himself. Sensing the awkwardness, we quickly changed the subject. That night, our last before heading home, we still had some we'd left from our travels. Wanting to enjoy it but mindful of the family's presence, we decided to ask the wife if it was okay to smoke on the property. Her reaction was unexpected. She laughed and called out to her husband, "Honey, the boys want to know if they can smoke some weed. What do you think?" He just laughed, giving no clear answer, and with a bemused expression, she told us to go ahead. We went out to the terrace to smoke, and eventually, the couple joined us for a chat. But things took a dark turn when they began asking a lot of questions about the weed, where we got it, how much it cost, who sold it to us, and how much it would be worth back home. Their interest seemed excessive, and then the wife casually mentioned, "We considered selling weed too, but too many people get killed by the cartels for that." Actually, my husband used to kill people for doing that. Instantly, I sobered up. Did she just say? And as if reading my mind, her husband added, "Yeah, when I was 16, I killed a lot of people for the cartel. It was just a job, like any other." He said it as if he were talking about mowing lawns. Still trying to process what I'd heard, I discreetly texted my friend, who confirmed that I hadn't misheard. We tried to remain calm, realizing we had no other option but to stay the night. It was too late to go anywhere else, and we figured that as guests, we were safe enough, for now. But the situation grew even more unsettling. A little while later, the husband went inside and returned with a massive brick of weed. He broke off pieces and rolled a joint so large it could have knocked out Snoop Dogg. He offered it to us, but we politely declined, saying we were already high enough. He seemed a bit annoyed but accepted our excuse. Then, things got worse. We suddenly heard loud bangs, gunshots. The wife became uneasy, asking what it was. 9mm, the husband replied calmly. The shots kept coming, around 7 in quick succession. The wife suggested going inside, asking what they might be shooting at, cows, people, or just in the air. But her husband dismissed her concerns, saying, "No, everything's fine. I haven't heard any screams yet." The way he said that, so calmly, sent a chill down my spine. We quickly made our excuses and retreated to our room. Once alone, we both lost it, panicking about what to do. Here we were, trapped in a house with a contract killer, gunfire outside, and no escape. We decided it was safer to stay put, better to have walls, dogs, and a killer between us and whatever was happening outside. We barricaded ourselves in the room and didn't sleep a wink until morning, when we finally left for the airport. I've never been so relieved to go through airport security in my entire life. In 2018, I, along with 3 of my friends, all guys in our early 20s, decided to take a trip to Bali for a week. The destination was affordable, and we had the time, so we thought, why not? Our plan was filled with typical vacation activities, exploring the sights, indulging in local cuisine, hiking, and visiting beachside bars. Indonesia was breathtaking, and the food was exceptional. However, there was one aspect of the trip that unsettled me: the locals. Drugs, particularly mushrooms, were rampant. The streets seemed to be crawling with people eager to sell us something. I'm not exaggerating when I say one of my friends simply took out a cigarette pack, and within minutes, someone offered him mushrooms. It was that pervasive. For context, none of us smoked, drank, or did any drugs. We just weren't into that scene, and the persistent offers made us uncomfortable. One of my friends, who I'll call A, was especially on edge. He was convinced that the locals were trying to drug or abduct us due to how aggressively they pushed their drugs on us. Every night, he insisted that we lock the doors and windows of our hotel room. At the time, I found his paranoia amusing, given that we were in one of the safest countries in the world. Still, we went along with it, as it wasn't really harming anyone. One incident during the trip stands out in my memory. It was our second night in Bali, and we were returning to our hotel after a long day out. We were staying in a family suite at a nice hotel close to the beach, which we had booked through Agoda. As soon as we entered the room, a foul odor hit us, a stench like someone hadn't bathed in days. We assumed it was due to the humid weather and didn't think much of it. We went to bed around 1 a.m. A few hours later, a loud knock jolted us awake. I glanced at the clock. It was 3:40 a.m. Groggy and confused, I got up and opened the door to find us standing there, his face pale and trembling. The smell in the room had grown even stronger. A told us he heard something coming from the bathroom in our suite. When I stepped into the bathroom, the stench was overwhelming. The floor was flooded with water, as if someone had recently taken a shower, and there was a strong odor of chlorine mixed with the foul smell. We immediately contacted the front desk, and they sent someone to check on the room. A middle-aged man arrived and inspected the bathroom. He suggested that the smell was likely due to the drainage system, and the flooding was the result of a leaking pipe. He offered to move us to another room, but we decided to stay, thinking we might be overreacting. Still, none of us slept well that night. The following morning, as we were getting ready to head out, I noticed something unsettling. There was a small, dark stain on the bathroom mirror. It looked like dried blood. Alarmed, I called the front desk again, and they sent someone to thoroughly clean the room. Although the smell lingered, it wasn't as intense. We spent the rest of our trip exploring Bali, trying to put the incident behind us. However, I remained paranoid, insisting on locking all doors and windows every night. On the last day of our trip, as we were packing, I discovered something under the bed. It was a small plastic bag, covered in dust. Inside was a bundle of old, crumpled money. We were stunned and had no idea how it got there. We decided to leave the bag where we found it and checked out as quickly as possible. After we returned home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. A few weeks later, I received an email from the hotel. They apologized for the inconvenience during our stay and informed us that the room had been closed for maintenance due to a plumbing issue. I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to the story. The entire experience left us with an unsettling feeling that we couldn't quite explain.